Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our annual Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce Sustainability Summit. This year has been interesting and filled with many challenges, to say the least, but none of that was going to prevent the Chamber of Commerce Energy and Environment Committee from providing the valuable information our annual Sustainability Summit provides. Today's topics will provide exciting information, new direction, and opportunity for businesses joining the event today. Sit back, grab a beverage, and enjoy today's virtual Sustainability Summit and Innovation Awards. Now, join me in welcoming Gina Martens, Senior Vice President, Member Relations and Sales for the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome again to the Energy and Environment Sustainability Summit. Before we kick things off, please help us recognize and thank today's event sponsors. Our presenting sponsor, Sustainable Energy Fund. Thanks to John Koslow for your partnership with this program, 11 years running. Our gold sponsors, Capital Blue Cross, a strategic partner of the Chamber, offering signature health plans for Chamber members. Thanks to Ann Baum and the team at Capital Blue. Coventry Environmental, Steve, thank you. And Workforce Board Lehigh Valley, thank you, Nancy. Our silver sponsors, IBEW Local 375, thanks, Paul. Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Becky Bradley, thank you. Andrea Hewitt Associates, Mike Gibson, our Energy and Environment Chair, thank you. PPL Electric Utilities, Jane, thank you. And RCN Business, thanks, Phil. Let's also recognize our bronze sponsors, ARM Group, LLC, AVK Council, Comstock Environmental, and Constellation Energy. From Electric and 3M, Lehigh County Authority, Lehigh County Conservation District, and RMS Environmental. Thank you again to all of our sponsors.
Thank you, Gina, for introducing Sustainable Energy Fund. We are proud to once again be the presenting sponsor for the Lehigh Valley Sustainability Summit. Sustainable Energy Fund is dedicated to assisting Pennsylvania energy users in overcoming financial, educational, and regulatory barriers to a sustainable energy future. We are also committed to actively creating a more sustainable future, which is why we built our net zero energy office building. We broke ground on this project in April of 2019, and the project was completed earlier this year. Located in Schnecksville, this space is the new headquarters for SEF and has open space available for local tenants who want to lower their carbon footprint and contribute to a more sustainable Lehigh Valley. As a way to help PA businesses effectively meet CDC guidelines for COVID-19 as people return to work, we are now offering loans for full upfront financing for energy-efficient mechanical ventilation systems, such as energy recovery ventilation and heat recovery ventilation systems. These systems allow fresh air to flow throughout a building while also increasing efficiency, unlike other ventilation technologies that will increase your electric bill. For more information on what SEF has to offer, visit our website at www.thesef.org.
My name is Ann Baum, and on behalf of Capital Blue Cross, I have the pleasure of introducing the first panel of this morning. The title of our panel is Coming Attractions: How Tackling Climate Change Will Affect Your Business. You will gain knowledge from a panel of experts representing the insurance and planning industries, consultants, and state officials. They will cover the current and future regulatory initiatives that address climate change, financial obligations you may expect your business to face, and what to watch for as rules and regulations change. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our moderator for this morning, James Rowland, the Regulatory Policy Manager at PPL. James, it's all yours.
With me today, I have 5 excellent candidates and panelists to support our conversation. I'm Jim Rowland. I work for PPL Electric, but with me I have, like I said, 5 panelists here. First is John Yurkonik, who is the president of the Yurkonik Agency. Next, I have Becky Bradley, the executive director of the LVPC, or Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. I also have Alan Landis with the Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP. Jim Policelli, who is also supporting from a regulatory impacts perspective. And last but not least, Katie Bartolota, who is a policy and program director for Green Buildings United. Just for all participants' awareness, as well as those that are watching this program, you can view everybody's bio through the virtual event program. So we're not going to go through everyone's, just to maximize the time and give you the opportunity to hear everyone's conversation. So with that, the topic of our session begins with how to tackle climate change and how it will affect your business. And I'd really like to first start with a general topic. I'm going to start it with Alan, Jim, and Becky, but of course, John and Katie, feel free to chime in at any time with your thoughts. But the first question is, what are the current or future regulatory initiatives to address climate change that affect how businesses can operate? Why don't I start with Alan? Why don't you go first?
Sure, absolutely. I can provide some perspective from DEP's regulatory standpoint. I think for us, in the short term, we have a few things that are climate focused that may impact, how some businesses operate. I think first and foremost is the regulation we're working on related to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative called RGGI. That is a cap and invest program on the electricity generation sector. So that regulation specifically targets natural gas and coal-fired electricity generation plants. So, most businesses don't have to comply, but, we're adding basically a price to the cost for them to generate electricity in a way. And that could have downstream impacts. We don't project a lot of impacts to standard residents and their electricity rates, but some businesses that, those large industrial and commercial electricity users where electricity use is a big part of their operating budget, this could have some impacts to them. Another one I could talk about that we're working on is a hydrofluorocarbon regulation, which is HFCs. So those are ozone depleting substances that contribute, that have a high global warming potential that contribute to climate change. And those are used in refrigerants and air conditioners. And we're drafting regulation to help replace to mandate some replacement of those. So again, that's somewhat targeted to businesses that have a high air conditioner or refrigerant use, such as like grocery stores, for example, where they might have to change some of those end uses out based on our regulation. In the long term, there's another initiative going around called the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is a group of Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern states coming together to try to create something similar to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that I talked about earlier. That's more focused on the transportation sector. Cap and invest program that's regionally based to limit emissions from the transportation sector. That's a little bit long term for Pennsylvania at least, but that could impact the price of gasoline down the line. So any businesses that rely on that or have a big portion of their budget dedicated to transportation costs could be impacted by those kind of regulatory efforts. I will say we do have non-regulatory initiatives too, the department, so to combat climate change. So there are opportunities as well, incentives such as our Driving PA Forward and our alternative fuel incentive grant programs, which are rebates and grants for businesses to replace their fleets or for consumers to change out their cars. So those are a few things we're working on, I think, that could impact businesses in both regulatory and maybe some opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alan. Becky, how about yourself?
Well, he mentioned the Transportation Climate Initiative. We're very heavily involved in that as the region's metropolitan planning organization. For us, it's more of not so much the cap and trade piece of it as much as it is trying to achieve some of our global climate change and climate action policy goals that we have set for the region, which have been adopted, by the way, by both counties, by the LVPC itself. Our second board, which is the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study that does the transportation planning and investment, accepted by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and then ultimately it's already been accepted by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So for us, they're a matter of practicality. Our air quality is not great. With the real rise in the industrial sector, I mean, we actually have had over 33 million new square feet of warehouse. So that's strictly e-commerce business added in the Lehigh Valley, approved by our local governments in the last 6 years. That's the highest rate of new freight facility growth in America, the second highest in the world behind China. So as a result of that, we have immense increase or potential increase in carbon emissions. We have to address that, especially since a lot of our manufacturing sector is based on food manufacturing and is very water heavy need end users. So as a result of that, we have to focus very, very much on our water quality as well. So there are so many things that we're doing on that. We've monitored our 16 watersheds and done the innocuously named, except incredibly powerful, Act 167 stormwater management planning for the region, which sets the basis for actual water quality at the watershed level. So it affects the whole extent of that watershed. That's critically important because you may live at the headwaters of the Jordan Creek up where I do in Heidelberg Township. But when you're down in South Whitehall and you need that for your drinking water, or you're in the city of Allentown and that aquifer feeds into that, you want to know that that water is clean. So having those more global initiatives that we've had for, at this point, well over 40 years are very critical. There's always the land use component of this. I can wax poetic about that. But one of the critical things to the climate conversation is the fact that you're consuming resources, and that has potential downside. It also has a potential positive side. So how do you then support greener development? How do you then work with municipal governments to figure out how their profile in their community actually helps improve the environment, which helps improve lives, and we believe absolutely then supports and improves business overall.
No, they're great points. Both you and Alan have kind of touched upon both the higher level policy initiatives. Alan, you were touching at Reggie, and then worked kind of your way down. And Becky, it seems like you've worked from kind of the middle down and then back up. I mean, you can just really see how they interplay amongst one another. Jim, kind of what's your take from a policy impact perspective, kind of hearing both Alan and Becky and your experience as well?
Well, the conversation can get pretty broad. I'm going to kind of limit my focus on the electric power system and the implications there, both for service and cost. At this point, I got to open by saying, like, it doesn't matter what your belief is on the global warming issue. The emotional and political momentum to have the government do something big to address global warming is overwhelming. We're going to get it. We're seeing this at the federal, at the state, and even at the municipal levels. For us, commerce and business and industry people out on the grid, ultimately when these programs get implemented, power costs are going to rise, and they're going to rise at times rather dramatically. And something of greater worry to me is the reliability of the grid is going to be damaged. For instance, every time you hang a new solar farm or wind farm onto the power grid, you damage the reliability of the power grid unless it has full battery backup, and that's rarely heard of. So every time we put a new system on, the grid gets more and more precarious. We have lots of studies that tell us that it isn't going to be that bad. Costs are not going to go up that much. And like, for instance, I think it's a study associated with the Reggie initiative. They expect, well, a homeowner or a family or household unit would only suffer about $8.50 a year or something like that. And I don't have much more detail on that. So you'd say, well, if it's only going to cost the family $8.50 a year and we're saving the world, why not? Let's do it. The thing is, there's a trap here. where we do, if you don't know what's coming, for instance, if you're going to implement laws and rules and regulations, routinely part of the process is to commission studies to find out what's this likely to happen. So you have studies, you have modeling, you have all of that. And overwhelmingly, what I've seen is the studies and the models that are brought forth tend to show a very rosy picture about, for instance, electric supplies, costs, reliability, that there's not going to be that much damage. In other countries, now but they are not data, right? Studies and modeling are not data, but they're treated like data. And that's a major thought error. Empirical data, empirical information, experience is really what counts. And we do have laboratories around the world, other countries that have societies very similar to ours, who have gone down this route and are way ahead of us on the amount of wind and solar, for instance, that they put on their grids. And back when their program started, their people were told very much what we are being told now. It's not going to cost that much, don't worry. Germany, one of the leaders of the pact, a dozen or more years ago, embarked on their energy transformation program. And people were concerned. They said, you're going to run our energy costs way up. And the explanation at the time was very straightforward. And it was this: if your energy costs rise at all, it will amount to no more than the cost of an extra scoop of ice cream at the end of a month. Well, Germany is out there, leader of the pack, with extremely high electric power rates. But it gets worse. And the worst part is when you load the grid with more and more wind and solar, you destabilize the grid. And this is very scary. There's a German official who is the counterpart to our FEMA, to the head of our FEMA, in a interview with Die Welt about a year ago, expressed concern. And he's advising German citizens, you should always have on hand in your house food, water, battery operated radios, this kind of thing. And you say, well, gee, we hear these kind of warnings too when a hurricane is going to hit. He's worried about that in day-to-day living. So the damage that we are going to see as commercial, industrial business people is not going to be the roofs of our buildings being ripped off by a raging planet. It's going to be these impacts. Now, it kind of gets worse because when you implement these programs, the models all tend to be, you can't get the voters mad at you. Everything is going to cost more for them. Their living costs are going to go up. Their energy costs are going to go up. So the name of the game is pay them off somehow. In other words, pay them a dividend. So maybe they see a check coming, literally a check coming in the mail periodically, and supposedly that will quell their anger. But we, commercial, industrial, business people, people who have to run institutions, we're the ones who are left. So when all of the energy costs are driven up by fees, taxes, and all of that kind of thing, we're the only ones left who don't get any break in prices or costs or anything like that. So us guys, we're going to take the big hit. The chamber type people are going to take the big hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this is kind of the good back and forth that leads perfectly into the next area, which is kind of the dig a little deeper, which, we've talked about policy initiatives that exist, but I think I'd really like to get into how we see these climate change and regulatory initiatives impact, as well as the opportunities associated with them for businesses. And you can kind of see that in a broad array. So what I'd like to do is actually open it up to the full panel with this next question. Leads perfect segment from what Jim was just talking about from the impacts perspective. Also like to pull in those opportunities. So for the whole panel, and maybe we'll start with Katie on this next one and just work through the group, but what do you perceive to be the impacts of climate change regulations on business? And like I said, not just necessarily the impacts, but also the opportunities for them as well.
Sure. So Jim just covered the supply side. I'm going to bring it back to the demand side, and perhaps unsurprisingly by the organization I'm here to represent, focus on buildings. So I do want to point out another piece of legislation that passed a couple of years ago that's going to have some potential changes coming down the pike as well, and that is the update to building codes. So in October of 2018, the 2015 international codes took effect in Pennsylvania, and that was a jump of 2 code cycles from where we were on the 2009 international codes. So that's something that we as an organization have been working to help support folks with, because anyone who is making a major update or building new construction has to meet these new code requirements. So we've been helping with the transition there. And right now, the Review and Advisory Council is considering the next edition of the codes, 2018 International Codes, which we've already adopted for commercial buildings in Philadelphia. So we have a sense of how implementation is going, and know that with this change, with new technology, new practices, new materials that have been integrated into the codes that are updated every 3 years, we've got better buildings that are better insulated, are more airtight, and again, on the demand side, are requiring less energy to keep folks inside of them comfortable. So when we're talking about the causes of climate change, building energy use is responsible for about 40% of carbon emissions in Pennsylvania. It's a really kind of cost-effective source and opportunity for mitigation to reduce those emissions by reducing building energy use, but it also comes at a cost savings to the folks who are paying for utilities and buildings, because to get to a comfortable level, especially in what we're projected to see in the region, we're looking at higher heat days, more extreme heat, so days above 90 degrees. And again, that comes at a cost. That's more energy to heat and cool. And so to the extent that you can make your building more efficient, more airtight from the start, the less that you're spending on energy to make sure that folks are comfortable and happy indoors. So that's something that we keep a close eye on and help to support. And again, really love the idea of some of this upfront investment that leads to life cycle cost savings, because we're just using less energy overall.
Great points, Katie. John, I've kind of not kept you out of this, but with your specific background with insurances and in just working with the public at large, what do you see from your perspective for the regulatory impacts to customers?
Well, not only am I in the insurance business, but we're property owners
Right.
in the Lehigh Valley, and we have 13 offices and another 12 locations that we rent out to people. So impact of regulation is important to us, not only in the insurance industry, but I see some of the as we mentioned earlier, our HVAC systems. In our buildings where refrigerants are no longer available, so where we may have been able to keep an HVAC unit going for another 3 to 5 to 7 years, we're being forced to swap them out with newer systems that are more climate friendly with the HVAC systems. And I say that it doesn't bother me at all. I'm for doing things that are right, whatever you believe is or is not happening, we do those. Another example is the lighting systems. Alan mentioned earlier, there's regulatory things that impact or force us to do things, but there's also voluntary things. There's initiatives to incent us. So lighting, we are actively swapping out older lighting technology. As we renovate, one of my buildings, 24,000 square feet, we're renovating about 7,000 square feet. And while doing that, we're swapping out all the lights in the whole building to the latest LED technology, because I think it's the right thing to do. Yes, that 7,000 square feet, it's required to do as we renovate, but the other, 18 or 17,000 square feet, we're voluntarily doing that because I'm going building by building and systematically with incentives that are available, swapping out the lighting systems. So impact both from regulatory and incentive plans, have impacted the business community, property owners, and so forth. In the insurance, it's in the rebuilding side. We typically see when there's significant damage to property, we will see boroughs, townships with the building codes when we rebuild. It's called ordinance and law coverage. So we are paying much more attention with our clients that have buildings, that are insuring buildings, to make sure they have the proper code upgrade coverage, that when we go to rebuild, the insurance company pays for exactly what is there. So when we go to rebuild, if that what is there is old and no longer meets current codes, we must provide an upgrade, and standard property insurance does not provide much in upgrade coverage. And then some of the major insurance carriers are providing green initiatives where it's not a requirement or a code upgrade, but if you choose to rebuild in more of a green friendly environment, they will provide coverage within the policies for that. So.
No, you've actually, that was a kind of a great dig into the different areas, both as the business owner, but also as the insurance side of things. Becky, Alan, Jim, is there anything else you've kind of like to add to the conversation when we dig into those issues and impacts as well as the opportunities?
I would absolutely like to add that there's cost to business, but there's also cost to government, which means there's cost to individuals and cost to business. There's cost to everyone is really the translation on that. I'll give you a perfect example. The couple of days that led up, the significant rainfall that we had, the couple days of rainfall, and then we had Hurricane Isaias. That caused significant water damage here in the Lehigh Valley. We had over 6 bridges that were completely collapsed as a result of those increase in flooding events. So those bridges are public assets, whether they're owned by the state of Pennsylvania, a municipal government, or a county government, because bridges can be owned by either of those 3, or they could even be privately owned. But in terms of publicly owned bridges, we lost 6 bridges in the Lehigh Valley just over a series of storm days, which actually turned out to be like the 5th or 6th largest, if you added up that rainfall in those few days, the 5th or 6th largest rainfall event since 1922 in the Lehigh Valley. So, sum total, we could be anywhere, and it's TBD yet because their engineers are trying to work out what they're going to do with those bridges. But, sum total, we're anywhere from $8 to $12 million worth of taxpayer money that needs to be, put into repairing, and in many cases, replacing those structures. That affects businesses' ability to deliver goods, people's ability to get their kids to school, to run errands, other things. They have to find different routes. On top of that, the system impacts, there's environmental impacts as well. So we need to pay for those repairs. As a result of these types of events, and prior obviously to Hurricane Isaias and the days that led up to it, the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study is part of its 4-year transportation investment program, which is a almost $452 million program that begins October 1 this year for road, bridge, transit, bike, and ped. We've have now basically a climate change line to address these more frequent flood events, to address sewer overflows, stormwater management related things that damage specific transportation infrastructure. So we actually had to carve off a basically insurance line to build off of John a little bit to help protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
Great. And Jim, we just have a few seconds here. I'll give you the opportunity to chime in as well.
Yeah. Okay. My concern lies with electric power supplies, and when you have failure of electric power supplies, you have bad failures. But I'm worried about our ability to invest in practical like business commercial expansion, and I use Australia. Was way ahead of the curve on implementing wind and solar. And once they started doing that, after decades of stable power prices, their power doubled. There was a steel maker, Blue Scope Steel, that needed an 850,000 ton a year expansion. This is a big deal. They did their analysis and they said, we're going to go to America to do this. They're going to go to Ohio. A location in Ohio, which is right in the middle of our PJM grid system, which is excellent, right? You can't get it better than we have it here in PJM. So that brought an enormous amount of grief to them. But here's Australia lost, you know, a $700 million business investment because of their, you know, their drive towards loading the grid with renewables. It damaged, you know, it doubled their cost. The CEO of BlueScope took the beating, the political beating back home, and he had to say, look, we did a business evaluation, and if we build the plant here, we're going to pay triple the energy costs that we would, he didn't say the PJM system, but in effect, in the PJM system. This worries me because a lot of other things that people want to claim as nuisances, maybe that are, you know, that are very prominent to them. I'm worried about these big hitters. And you look to California, boy, when you start losing your power grid, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, from what I'm hearing from all of you, we're seeing both a number of items, great opportunity, but also some things that we definitely have to watch out for when it comes to regulation, how we implement these regulations. And John, when you had talked about both as a business and an insurance provider, a number of different elements, kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit to hear from you. Specifically, you know, we're hearing that from underwriters that insurance rates they're increasing due to climate change related impacts. And, you know, these can include, you know, increased rainfall, sinkholes, and so on. What are you seeing in the market, and what can you kind of convey to those watching this program?
So Jim, just let me preface about the industry. I think the industry, you know, people perceive the industry can find any reason as to why rates will go up. But this question is great and very pertinent now because a lot is happening in the market and climate change is impacting things. So I'll give the answer first, and then I'm going to go back and try to build the why to give some clarity as to what's happening in the insurance industry with regards to climate change and rate impact. So the answer is yes, climate change is having an impact on property rates and will have an impact on future general liability rates, as we're seeing some discussions about what could be a cause. If you cause an issue or cause something into the climate, will your general liability or liability policies respond? So I broke this down into three things. One is regulatory issues. So how are regulators adjusting to their role to ensure solvency of insurance industry, you know, as a result of climate change? And I'll dig in a little deeper there. I'll come back. Insurance carriers. So the insurance carrier part of this, insurance companies love predictability. Climate change messes that up. Very much less predictable. And then I call reality, the third part. What is happening in the market and what's being felt by the consumer? Because importantly, they pay the price, as we've talked about costs being shifted, whether it's residential, commercial, around all these issues. The reality part I'll hit last. So back to the regulatory part. Insurance regulators, you know, most people perceive them as an enforcing arm. It's state by state in the United States, but they do much more than just enforcing. In my opinion, their most important role is making sure that insurance carriers remain solvent. And they do this by reviewing and approving the insurance premiums being charged are adequate to cover future losses. And remember that term, future losses, because we do things today for the future in insurance. With increased frequency and severity of weather-related claims, the regulators need to make sure the insurance carriers are appropriately pricing changes in climate into their products. So that's the regulatory side of things. And we're seeing more and more of the state regulators paying attention to rate filings that make sure there's some component of climate change and factoring that in. Again, they need to make sure the insurance carriers remain solvent. Every insurance carrier wants to remain solvent, but the regulators are backing that up. So now the insurance carriers, predictability. With predictability, they can adequately price their products by predicting the future frequency and severity of claims. Now, frequency, I've used these terms. Frequency is how often claims occur, and severity is how severe the claims will be. Two big factors in insurance pricing. So how does climate change mess this up? Again, remember, insurance companies collect today their premiums to pay out tomorrow or next week or next year or 3 years from now. So they have to be able to predict things. With climate change, the frequency of hurricanes, forest fires, the effects of the rainfall that we just discussed in the area, hail claims. We've had more hail claims in the Lehigh Valley area in the last 5 years than we did in my first 25 years of insurance. So in addition to the severity of climate-induced claims becoming more severe, we also see what's happening in California with the wildfires. Drier conditions lead to more severe impact of the fires. So now reality. So what is the consumer feeling? What's the market doing? And I've already touched on my 30 years experience. You know, my first 10 years, I remember, and that's the 90s, by the way. So I remember a few snowstorms, a hurricane or two. Yes, there was damage, but nothing, you know, everything's catastrophic, but it wasn't in the news every day. The 2000s to 2010, we had some more weather-related issues. We had Hurricane Katrina. But since 2010, it just seems more is happening. Maybe I'm more aware. I don't know. I don't have scientific data as some of the other experts here today would have. But the frequency and severity seems to have increased. Hurricanes not only hit the coast, but they're coming inland and doing significant damage with rainfall and wind. Again, the West Coast fires are burning acreage, hailstorms. Since 2015, we've had probably 4 or 5 major hailstorms come through the Lehigh Valley. So now what does this mean to the consumer? The insurance industry is modeling out climate-induced claims with a higher frequency and higher severity, which ultimately means the price is trending up. So sorry about that. The unfortunate conclusion, there is a price trend in property rates that is heading upward. So.
Great, thanks a lot, John. Kind of really gives both great insight into kind of what you're seeing and even kind of how you started out from your business perspective. And I'd like to kind of keep things moving, but along the same vein, Jim, you did a great job in touching how the utility perspective for cost, but also risk exists for the market with climate change. And I'd like to scratch the surface of that and maybe go a little bit deeper by also pulling in Becky and Alan in this conversation with regards to some of the risks that all of you have defined for utility operations. And Jim, you had initially started with well, a whole bunch of areas, but from the integration of renewable resources, well, you didn't use the word, it's really the link to transmission and how we're going to get the resources here to market, the risks associated with it. But we have more as well than just the energy. Becky, you touched about on water and land use. Alan, you did very similarly, both as it relates to the energy sector and water and land use, but also air emissions. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. Alan.
Yeah, sure. I think, so, you know, the department studies the future climate impacts in Pennsylvania, and what we're expecting to see is 2 main climate threats. One is increase in extreme heat, and then the second one is an increase in intensity of precipitation events, right? And they've been touched on. I think on the extreme heat side, the main impact is going to be on the electrical grid during the summer. So we would expect to see more stress on the grid with increased cooling loads due to the heat. And this is going to be compounded, I think, by a continued trend of electrification. So as we electrify our cars and our water heaters and our yard equipment, while continuing to not invest, heavily enough to modernize our grid and see increased heat due to climate change, we need to be concerned with what that's going to do to the grid and the ability to reliably deliver electricity during peak demand. I think that's kind of concern one. In California, I do want to add, California was mentioned, and that's an interesting case study. Their recent blackouts, and I think the regulators have said it. Not necessarily the addition of renewables onto the grid alone is causing those issues. They're kind of performing as projected, but the increase of demand, from California and also nearby states, and the ability to transmit the electricity due to limits to mitigate wildfire risk is kind of the combination, a nasty combination for them. I think the reality is that the grid is old, is problem one. And two, it's kind of built for a centralized plants kind of nearby to where demand is. It's not built for renewable integration, as you alluded to, Jim. So I think it's important to build a grid to be able to do that. And then the other one piece I want to hit on is the intensity of precipitation events, right? So that means that we expect the summer rainstorms will tend to become heavier and more extreme and those impacts will be really localized. A good example, I know Becky alluded to one, a good example. Another one was in the summer of 2018 in the south central part of the state. We saw places like Hershey, where you had parts of Hershey Park underwater in a very short amount of time. And this impacts our infrastructure, right? So PennDOT, for example, alone had about 125 million damages, the roads they managed that year alone. So this can impact underground utilities, also above ground. The impacts of the grid will be localized, but other areas where the energy transport sector could be at risk, especially in the southwest part of the state, where we're projecting a higher risk of landslides to impact that energy transportation infrastructure that they have.
Right. Becky, can you kind of build on that from your perspective for the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission?
Yeah, I actually think both Alan and Jim have made a couple really, really good points. Jim's great point here is the fact that you have to be thoughtful. And then Alan's, there's just going to be more energy usage, and that's changed. So energy has become more diversified, right? How you generate it, how it's consumed, where it's consumed. And the where it's consumed piece is critically important, not only to the utilities, but to the end users, whether those are businesses or residential homes. The amount of energy usage during the daytime in residential properties right now is really, really high as a result of so many people working from home, kids going to school from home, things like broadband access, internet access, other things. Those demands have shifted from where they're occurring. The hard infrastructure sort of kind of exists, but maybe not to the level or the capacity that rises up to the demand. Those demand locations were already changing. I think Alan alluded to this, but the electrification of vehicles is a perfect example of that. Every major vehicle manufacturer in the world has declared that they're moving all electric at some point, right, in the future. Some of them are more aggressive on that timeline, others are less so, and maybe investing in other technologies. I would say, too, that they're also working on different forms of power for vehicles as well, beyond electric. But let's just focus on electric for a minute. Well, right now, we know to go to the gas station, there's only so many electric vehicle charging stations for public use, and they're tied to a certain type of vehicle. As those technological changes happen, as we now need to fuel our vehicles in our homes, the demand on our private sector, especially the energy generation and transmission, is going to be exponential. So there's just more energy usage already, but it's also shifting. So now you couple in, extreme weather events, flooding. Alan mentioned landslides, which is very, very real scenario. That's happened in the Lehigh Valley recently. So, you couple all of those things, and you really have to have a very thoughtful, well laid out plan for how the private sector and the public sector are going to work together to ensure, overall safety and meet those demands. I believe that there's a lot of money to be made as part of this conversation. I don't think change is bad in a lot of instances in this regard. It can be. The climate change is not positive in many, 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 many regards. But on the other hand, there's a business opportunity in that. So figuring out how to rise to the challenges of really the fourth industrial revolution, which we're in the middle of. So our whole society is changing. And you see that played out in politics and in consumerism and all of these other things. You kind of have to bring that together and find out, how do we rise to the challenge? And the businesses that rise to the challenge are the ones that are going to make the money. And simultaneously, then we have a lot of opportunity because of the focus on greener or more sustainable or resilient business practices to then make our world better and help to mitigate some of these climate issues.
Yeah, that's right. They're great points.
Hey, Jim, interrupt. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want any of the other chamber members to hear this, but Becky, you and I are going to partner after this, being a businessman and an entrepreneur. So keep that quiet, and let's take advantage of this fourth industrial opportunity. So sorry, just had to have a little.
No, absolutely makes a lot of sense. We're both fortunately and unfortunately maybe quickly coming up on the end of time, and we have two other segments I definitely want to touch on. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a fire round here. I'm not going to specifically put it up to any of you, just allow you to kind of interject, but keep your kind of comments, if you can, short and sweet so we can kind of move through and stay within our time. So the last two, and Becky actually led perfectly into it, which was transportation. We talk about electrification, but I have a general question more about the transportation itself. So specifically, what about transportation with the new challenges, challenges to different industries, are all of you seeing from the transportation initiatives as it relates to climate change? You have new vehicle types, you have electric charging stations, infrastructure, costs to consider, opportunities, and so on. So what are your thoughts on the evolution of the transportation sector and how it impacts our businesses? Anyone interested in jumping in?
Well, I'll talk about two things that we didn't really necessarily touch on yet. One is the freight sector, and the other is on-demand transportation systems. So the freight sector is evolving literally every minute on the minute. So as we shop more online, we're going to need more delivery vehicles. We're going to need less retail space. So the transportation system itself is seeing more volume of heavyweight vehicles. So more frequency, heavier vehicles. Roads aren't built for that, especially in Pennsylvania and in the Lehigh Valley, where by and large, we were a rural, suburban, slightly urban place up until the last 20 years or so, where we've become more dense suburban, more urban. And then there's the tug and pull between the transformation of our rural areas and the balance of that. And that just happens with growth in an area. Simultaneously, we have Uber, we have Lyft, insert on-demand service here or there. That's coupled with these autonomous vehicles, electrification, and new fueling types of vehicles. Air Products is working on some really interesting stuff related to vehicle fueling, fuel cell technologies as well. I don't want to leave that out of the equation either. And so ultimately, the system wasn't designed for these new challenges. The transportation system in Pennsylvania, quite frankly, was basically designed from its history as an agrarian system to get goods to market. Now it's transforming beyond the interstate highways, which was the next evolution, to then how do we shore up these feeder roads that go into these higher order roads, or Route 22, 33, I-78 type roads, and the demand and pressure on those. That means that we're going to have more emissions in different places than we had them before. We're going to have more congestion in those locations, which is, causes more emissions, which then really supports then needing cleaner ways to move people. So I hope I summarized that as best I could, but everything's coming together in this brave new world, right? And we have to figure out what that means. And again, this gets back to John and my partnership here. There is a lot of opportunity in this sector in particular, but in other sectors as well. But to make things greener, to make things safer, to make things more climate resilient, and a lot of money to be made in that. But that transition piece, which is really what Jim was talking about, like how do we manage that? And if we don't do that successfully, then we have these major issues like you see out in California.
Right. Alan, you had initially actually started with the Pennsylvania Drive Electric program, which is really for this transportation piece. Can you elaborate maybe a little bit more on that as well as what you're seeing?
Yeah, we've done a lot of planning we have a Drive Electric PA coalition of planners and a plan called our environmental or EV roadmap. So there's a lot of documents out there on what we're trying to do. We do have incentives. I think on the residential or the kind of passenger fleet side of things, as Becky alluded to, there is already a lot of movement on that. I mean, GM, for example, has the 20 electric vehicles they're going to, release in 2023. I think there's a lot of movement there. I think the chargers are coming online there. I think we have a lot of momentum. I think the harder piece is the medium and heavy duty trucks. One, the technology is not as there. There's not as many vehicles. And I think for businesses, from a nut we're trying to crack from a planning standpoint is how businesses manage the purchasing of these, right? So, if you want to start electrifying your fleet, you have to buy new trucks and electrical infrastructure, on site, right? So you have to work with utility to get it there. You have to buy, but businesses aren't buying all new fleets at once. You're buying them over time. So how do you manage buying some electric, trucks and then managing the infrastructure? You don't want to do your infrastructure piece by piece. That becomes more expensive. So to me, that's a really, really tough challenge for businesses to update their fleets and electrify them, and something we're trying to figure out how we can incentivize them to do that.
Yeah, great. So we're quickly running out of time here, but I would like to kind of touch on the last item. I'm going to open it up to all of you again to interject as necessary and as you have comments. So right along to the last of these main questions for our panel. We've discussed and talked a lot about both the time, the cost, the opportunity, the issues, the business ventures that might have just happened on this panel. But I'd like to get kind of all of your thoughts on what you specifically see from a cost recovery perspective. So do you expect to recover new costs through regulatory agency approvals or even local or municipal regulatory approval processes? Maybe we could start with Alan or Becky. Jim.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to recap to what I had opened with earlier. We commercial industrial business people, we are not going to be part of the recovery group. Remember, you're going to have to the costs of our energy and anything associated with that, which is everything. Everything has to be transported, manufactured, and all that. We are going to take the hit, and they're going to have to buy off the voters. And if there is any flow of funds, it's going to be towards the residential class of service customers. And we now there are going to be specific entities, industrial or commercial. If you're going to sell solar panels, you're going to do it. You got a great growth potential there, but that's on the backs of all the rest of us commercial people. So no, we are going to take the hit, and we're going to endure the hit. So we're not going to be recovering costs from from government rebates or incentives or anything like that.
Any thought from the rest of the panel?
Yeah, Jim, I would just add, not from a regulatory perspective, I look at investment in both my businesses and my properties. And if I can make my properties more attractive to the potential renter that might say, hey, I like seeing all these LED lights. I like knowing the HVAC systems have been up. And as a byproduct, my operating costs will be lower within a building that's been retrofitted by the landlord. I look at those investments. Now, am I going to get dollar for dollar back? I don't know, but I might win that tenant that I might otherwise lose to another property if they are evaluating those characteristics.
Right, Katie?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what John says, because I think that's a lot of experience that we've gotten from our commercial building owners around, again, attractiveness to tenants by promoting energy efficiency as part of their suite of services, because again, the trickle down of reduced utility costs, again, increased comfort and especially employee productivity for tenants has been a big feature of that. And then I think also, just if you look at jobs numbers pre and post pandemic, I think there's another really great opportunity for investment in this, given that we have a really strong clean energy economy in Pennsylvania. 90,000 jobs recorded, 70,000 of those just in energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is the first and best step to reduce demand, reduce climate causing carbon emissions, reduce cost at the building level, and also help with economic recovery and getting folks back to work in an otherwise really robust industry.
Yeah, great points. So at this point, this has been an absolutely phenomenal discussion. I believe I've learned a lot from all of you and what's kind of evolving within the framework of Pennsylvania at the moment. But and honestly, I have no doubt that the audience here, also listening to all of you, will be able to take away a great deal of information from the discussion. Definitely helped everyone at least thinking about what's coming down the pike, as well as the climate change regulations as they begin to solidify within the state. However, unfortunately, we're also at the end of our segment here. But before I go, I'd like to thank all the panelists, all of you, for participating in this. It's been a great discussion. As I said, I've learned a lot, and I think will really help all of the businesses in the Lehigh Valley really understand kind of how this topic's evolving. We can move from there and hopefully build up and more business ventures and partnerships among constituents in the Lehigh Valley, and we'll move from there. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome guests and members of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm Steve Orwashel, president of Coventry Environmental. Established in 2012, we are an environmental remediation contractor practicing along the Mid-Atlantic states. Some of the service lines are listed on the whiteboard behind me, as you can see. At every sustainability summit, we award a Lehigh Valley-based organization that goes above and beyond their sustainability initiatives. On behalf of the Chamber's Energy and Environment Committee, I am proud to be presenting the 2020 Nonprofit Award. For 20 years, the Sustainable Energy Fund has strived to advance smart, sustainable energy in Pennsylvania, financing renewable energy projects as well as pushing forth initiatives to expand the capabilities and capacities of existing renewable energy programs in the Commonwealth. To expand their own capacities, the Sustainable Energy Fund broke ground on a new 15,000 square foot net zero energy building capable of generating more energy than it actually consumes. One of the main goals of this building was to provide an example to the residents of the Lehigh Valley that a sustainable building is possible and can be constructed within market value. The building is the first of its kind, a net zero building in the Lehigh Valley. Please join me in welcoming John Koslow, President of the Sustainable Energy Fund, and Robert Thompson, the Chairman of the Board.
Hello, my name is Bob Thompson. I am the Board Chair for the Sustainable Energy Fund. I want to thank the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce for honoring us with this award. I also thank Ashley McGraw, TN Ward, Revision Architecture, and all companies that worked with them. We could not have accomplished this without their guidance and expertise.
Years of energy, dedication, and hard work went into making this project a reality. One of the purposes of this project was to prove that a net zero building could be made at market rate. This building will allow other area businesses to take part in a brighter energy future, whether they are renting a space or taking one of our educational courses.
It was important to the board and the Sustainable Energy Fund employees that we walk the walk and truly live our mission. We hope this building serves as an example to the Lehigh Valley that positively influences our built environment and brings more awareness to the importance of seeking a sustainable energy future.
The Sustainable Energy Fund Net Zero building is actually more than net zero. It is estimated to generate about 30% more energy than it uses. We accomplished this by installing a solar photovoltaic array on the roof to generate energy and by implementing multiple energy-saving features. Some of the energy-saving features include 3 layers of insulation in the walls and the ceiling of the building, daylighting to reduce the need for electrical lighting as much as possible during work hours, a variable refrigerant flow system for heating and cooling which allows for small heat and cool zones throughout the building which automatically shut off in areas that are unconditioned. This also allows for individual heating and cooling of offices for comfort. An energy recovery ventilator system circulates fresh air through the building at all times, maximizing the wellness of the building. There is also a dashboard system in the common space which displays details of the energy usage in the building. This is meant to showcase the impact tenants have on the building's energy usage and encourage tenants to make smart energy conscious choices.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the Energy and Environment Summit today. We would love to be with you in person, but unfortunately, these are unusual times and video and virtual will have to work for now. So I'm Shannon Quicker. I'm with Sustainable Energy Fund, which I know you've already heard about us through this conference. You just got to see our great net zero energy building. And then my colleague, Kristen, was able to introduce us as the presenting sponsor. So we're really grateful to be here. We fully stand behind this committee and the chamber. We love how the Energy and Environmental Committee is designed to balance the regulatory and environmental aspects that can impact a business. So we see this as something that's important to us because ultimately when we're investing in energy, we are investing in our future and trying to make this world slightly better than when we first started working, when we came into this world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are. We are a nonprofit that's all about advancing sustainable energy, be it energy conservation, energy efficiency, or renewable energy. And we do that in a couple of ways, which I'll share with you now. Here on this slide, I'm showing you the three main ways. These are our front-facing products or programs that are designed to overcome the barriers associated with sustainable energy, whether it's finance, education, or regulatory. Sometimes you don't see the regulatory. We will testify on behalf of the ratepayers through the PUC to make sure that utilities are being fair. That's something that really just goes on behind the scenes, and sometimes we might say something about it, but for the most part, these are our front-facing products. So we have our program-related investments. This is our financial arm, which I'm going to talk about more on the upcoming slides. But one thing about our program-related investments and how it came to fruition is really how we came into fruition was in 1999, the utilities were deregulated and there were settlements that occurred immediately afterwards. One of the settlements said so much money per ratepayer, per utility needs to be set aside to advance sustainable energy. And that's how we were formed. So there we were. We received those funds from 1999 to 2006. And the way that we have recycled, reused those funds is through commercial loans and stipulated energy savings agreements, which I'll talk about later. We also have an educational arm. We really understand that the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow, and to help them be equipped, we've had conferences. Energy Path, unfortunately, this year we did not get to run it because of COVID, but we like to provide hands-on training. Right now, there's times we're doing virtual events, webinars, multiple ones a month, depending on what's of interest. If you have a topic that you're interested in, let us know, and we will most definitely put it on our calendar. Hopefully soon we can invite you to our net zero energy building and have live in-person trainings. But for right now, we will just have to enjoy this time behind our computers and know that we can see each other's faces from afar, from a distance, and communicate this way. We also have special projects, and these vary from year to year. Our net zero energy building would be considered a special project. We set out to prove that net zero energy can be done at market rates. Here we are, walking the talk. It's really exciting. I know you just saw the video, so I'll leave it at that. We're all really excited that we can go to work in a place that we know that it is generating its own electricity. It's really kind of cool. And then our special projects really do vary. We've done solarized programs where we're trying to make it more accessible, solar more accessible, and drive down the cost of solar, which has dropped down significantly in the last 10 years. But we really wanted to see more. We want people to think that they're keeping up with the Joneses by going solar, or at least I do personally. We've also ran solar, let me think. So nonprofit energy makeover contests where nonprofits have entered a contest to win energy efficiency retrofits, as well as a little bit of solar, which was exciting. We were able to grant money out to New Bethany Ministries and the Lehigh County Humane Society, both nonprofits that are near and dear to some of our hearts. And then right now we also have CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, but it's an innovative financial tool that ties the lien to the property so that the property owner can preserve their credit. And it's a long-term financing instrument to help capture those savings to help pay for the loan. But you'll learn a little bit more about that next. So I want to talk a little bit about CPACE before I dive into our programs. Many of you may know Holly Enninger. She's our Director of Special Projects, and she's been the one that's really been promoting this throughout the state. She's been trying to get the counties on board, along with John Koslow. As you see, we have 11 on board right now that have enabled CPACE in their communities. We are the program administrator for everything outside of Philadelphia right now, and hopefully soon we'll see everything green. Of course, COVID put a little bit of a damper on this, but I think counties are becoming more interested because they see this as an economic recovery tool, and it really is. Not only are we reducing energy efficiency, but it creates jobs because of someone's got to do the work, and it just ultimately is going to improve the environment for the public. So as a program administrator, we are not lending. I just want to make sure that that's clear. We are not lenders in this arena. We will promote the program and educate the community on the program, as well as make sure that the projects that come in are meeting all the guidelines that were set out. So we are the ones that are dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and just ensuring that everything is designed to protect the environment or protect the public and create jobs. So obviously we're not here to enforce job creation, but we just see that as an extra benefit. And CPACE, which I think I might have said before, is a financial instrument that ties the lien to the property and stays with the property throughout the time. And it's long-term financing, which is really nice. That's really hard to find in the commercial world. So the financing term is usually the length of the equipment. So it could be anywhere from 10 to 20 years, depending on the life of the equipment, which is really nice. So that helps you use the energy savings to help pay for the project because it's stretched out over a longer period. And like I said, it stays with the property. It helps the property owner preserve their credit, and it's going to increase the value of their property as they make these capital upgrades that really just optimize the energy use and demand in the building. So it's a really great tool. You can contact Holly or myself. We'll be the ones that administer and manage the program. She's more marketing promotion, and I'm more on the technical review side, or financial. Yeah, it would be technical review. So like I said, we're just making sure that these projects are creating the public benefit that they set out to create. At our financing, sometimes when we look at energy financing, we think it's complicated, but it's really not. There are a couple of components and stakeholders that are involved. Usually there's going to be an energy service provider, which could be the engineer or a contractor, who is the one that comes out and does the evaluation and says you're going to save this much energy. Our loans are traditional commercial financial instruments, anywhere from 5 to 7 years, 100% financing, and anywhere from 4.5% to 6.5% interest. Usually it's depending on the market. The engineer is usually the one that's going to verify those statements or estimate the savings. And so our requirements for a loan is that one either reduces energy, so there's an energy savings component. It replaces a fossil fuel with a clean energy, or it is renewable energy. So some of we get questions about replacing a fossil fuel. Natural gas, yes, it's a fossil fuel, but if it's a combined heat and power system that's capturing the heat, we see that as incredibly efficient because it is. And it's something that we would finance if it was something you were interested in. I have these different components on here. So our loans are secured by the equipment, and the installation sometimes can take a long time. You have permitting and then just getting the project off the ground. So we can provide a 6-month interest-only period just to help navigate through that time and wait to get the full, so you can start achieving the full benefits earlier and get everything up front and running. So that's ultimately why I have installation on here. And depending on what kind of instrument, so our loans, they're easy. You just we just want to look at the savings, and if your contractor was not able to provide the savings, we can look and give a technical view and confirm. So please don't worry if you don't actually have the savings. We can help you figure them out, and we'll take a look at it. And our loans, we strive to make the monthly payment less than the energy savings so that you could be cash flow positive. Doesn't always work out, but we will do our best to try to make that happen. Sometimes that means we're going to provide a balloon loan and am it out 15, 20 years, depending on the size of the project and your needs and the energy savings. So we look at everything. And we've financed anything from LED to solar, which you'll see coming up. And then in addition to our commercial loans, we also have energy savings agreements, which is a contract between us, the engineer, and the end user, the customer. So it's a stipulated energy savings that we're saying that if you install these, we're going to capture the savings to help pay for these energy upgrades. It's usually a deep energy retrofit, anywhere from 30% or more. And it's great because it's just a service agreement that we can use, and the monthly payments are going to be less than the energy savings because the savings are paying for that. You see this a lot in the MUSH arena, which is, municipalities, universities, schools, and healthcare systems. So big energy users with lots of buildings. So they have a large building portfolio where they can capture the savings from multiple buildings and then use that to pay for the whole portfolio. We want to make it more accessible, and we offer that to smaller businesses as well as nonprofits. One thing I should note about our financing, there's never a prepayment penalty. So especially for nonprofits, if you do everyone, but if a nonprofit were to run a fundraising campaign or a capital fundraising campaign, and they end up getting the funds early, they can just pay it off with whatever they raised through their donors. And it's the same for anyone. So if you wanted to reinvest those savings that you are achieving to help pay off the loan quicker, it's up to you. Or you can use it for your business. It's really, you're in control here. So just reach out with us if you have a question, anywhere from $5,000 to $1 million project, and we can go beyond $1 million, and we evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. So here's a project that we did. This was an energy savings agreement. So it included LED lighting retrofit, HVAC, boiler systems, quite a bit of upgrades, and the total cost was $162,000, and they ended up saving over $30,000 a year, and it ended up being about just less than $300 a month in their monthly payments, and it was cash flow positive, and it was really great. And one thing we do now is a stipulated. So we understand that there's a lot of variables when it comes to operating our own buildings. Maybe it's a really humid summer and you're going to end up cranking up your AC to help get some of that moisture out. So that's why we estimate, and we're stipulating the savings, because we understand that our operating hours may change throughout the year. But if it were to be the steady rate based on a baseline, we know that it would achieve these savings. And we usually work it out with a contractor. If it's not meeting the savings, we are going to reconcile that and make sure that it is fixed. These are great. They're anywhere from 8 years to 10 years. Oh, excuse me, 15, maybe 20 max. And it's just a service agreement. So it's kind of saying energy as a service that we can use to help make energy efficiency more accessible. And this works for energy efficiency upgrades more than anything. And I said that we do anything from solar, or all the way from LEDs to solar, wind, renewable energy. I know this looks similar to our building, but it is not. I didn't want to kill you by our net zero building. This is a building out west in the Pittsburgh area. It's the borough of Forest Hills. They wanted to walk the talk as well. And they decided to go to source all their energy from 100% renewable energy using solar. It's a great project, 175 kilowatt solar array for a 13,000 square foot structure. We work these projects out together with our partners. This was brought to us by EIS, which is a solar installer out in Pittsburgh, who brought this to us. And it's a great project because anything that's advancing clean energy in Pennsylvania, we see as a win, whether we were involved or not. And we were fortunate to be involved. And a lot of our projects are solar, but don't let that deter you. We do everything under the sustainable energy umbrella. So one thing I wanted to talk about, and I know Kristen alluded to this in the beginning, these are indeed unusual times. We need to start thinking about how we use our buildings in a healthy way. We spend more time indoors now than ever. I mean, it's been that way for a while. But now with an extra contaminant, COVID-19, which has just been added to the pile, which there's like VOCs, volatile organic compounds, odors, all kinds of things in our indoor air that are sometimes worse off than when we're outside. The ASHRAE as well as the CDC have both made recommendations for ventilation. Of course, CDC has much more in-depth when it comes to returning to work and having a safe work environment. But we know that the transmission is through the air is sufficiently likely, and airborne exposure to the virus should be controlled. And we recommend doing this through ventilation and using your mechanical systems to do this. This requires more energy. So instead of just using a traditional HVAC and pumping up and ventilating more, you can just install an energy recovery ventilator or heat recovery ventilator that is going to help reduce the demand for energy. This is something that we can finance, and as you're looking for safer ways to return, to bring more outside air in, to ultimately clean the air, or you'll have to remove the air that's inside. So when it's an exchange. So we just want to let you know that we're here, and if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, we have a lot of partners we're working with on this. We just had a webinar. I can share it with you if you contact me, which is going to be on the last slide here. But we all want to have a safe return to work, and we want to really kind of think about how we can use our buildings as a means to protect our employees as best as we can. Of course, it's not a be-all, it's not a guarantee, but it is something that's recommended to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. So as I was saying, we really work with a lot of engineering and energy service providers. We see as partners, but ultimately everyone's a partner. We all use energy, and we can all do our part to help reduce energy. So we see you as a partner, and we all make a difference together. So if you have any questions, please contact me at my email below or give me a call, and we can let you know a little bit more about our financing or any of our other programs. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Enjoy the next panel. Thank you again. Bye.
Congratulations, John, Bob, and the entire team at Sustainable Energy Fund. Thank you once again for being our presenting sponsor for the 11th consecutive year. I'm Brittany Whalen, Government Affairs Director of the Chamber and one-stop operator for the Workforce Board Lehigh Valley. Our second panel will focus on adapting to climate change. Taking action can turn risk into competitive advantage. You will hear from marketing, utility, and supply chain experts who will provide advice and solutions to reduce your business's carbon footprint and achieve sustainability goals while maintaining your competitive advantage. I would like to introduce our moderator, Mike Gibson, the Business Development Manager for Andrew Hewitt Associates and the Chairman of the Chamber's Energy Environment Committee, to kick us off.
I'm Michael Gibson of Andrew Hewitt Associates, and I'll be our moderator for session 2. With me as our panelists, I have Andy Montero of Constellation Energy. Andy, please wave. Adam Smartian from Altitude Marketing. Adam, if you could wave. And Vince Cimarelli from ESPI. Vince, if you could wave also. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining our Session 2 panel. And just as a reminder to all of our attendees, you can find all of these gentlemen's bios in our virtual program. So let me get right off and start with a question first for Adam. Adam, have you at Altitude seen impacts of climate change create new opportunities for any of your clients?
Absolutely, absolutely. Things are, as we all know, changing very, very fast these days. And the pace of change is only accelerating here in the last 6 months, not just because of climate change, but because of other things that I'm sure that we can all think of. Our most successful and our most innovative clients, in a lot of ways, are thriving right now. They've been able to adapt to new market needs, to provide new things that 6 months ago, a year ago, never would have been needed. So the opportunities are absolutely there. That said, the risk is absolutely there on the other side as well.
Good, great, thank you. Vince, you deal a lot with manufacturers and producers of products and services. Do you find the same thing? Do you see that businesses are getting new opportunities as a result of climate change and adjusting to climate change?
Absolutely. We're noticing a lot of our clients at the moment are looking at ways to reduce a lot of their footprint, especially on incoming packaging, outgoing packaging, looking to consolidate inbound and reduce the amount of packaging being brought in, and also on the outbound side, looking for ways to just overall reduce their footprint.
Okay, great, thank you. And Andy, I would imagine on the energy side, you deal with that a lot. I would imagine you're seeing impacts from climate change and your customers wanting to reduce their footprint as well. Is that what you see at Constellation?
It is indeed, Mike. We have a lot of our customers who are coming to us saying that they are getting pressure from their boards of directors, from their customers, from their upper management to show what they're doing as far as their sustainability efforts go. And so they come to us and say, what can you do to help us reduce our carbon footprint? What can you do to help us conserve energy? What can you help us do to be more sustainable in the way we buy and use energy?
Great. Vince, just again, an energy question for you. Again, dealing in the manufacturing sector, I would imagine you probably work with a lot of utilities for your clients to help to reduce their carbon footprint as well and reduce climate change. Is that the case?
We're seeing a little bit of it, yes. And a lot of it is we're working with the utilities to do a lot of monitoring, and then from that monitoring, being able to see where we can actually reduce that footprint.
Okay. Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Move on to the next question for all of you. I'll start with Andy on this one. Are regulatory initiatives affecting market trends? And if so, how are they affecting them?
Well, they absolutely are, Michael. You know, we are seeing, again, a lot of customers are looking for options because they're being mandated to do so, besides just the pressure from, you know, their constituents I mentioned earlier. There are renewable portfolio standards, or RPS, you know, across the country that are saying that you are going to be required to, you know, reduce your energy footprint or become carbon zero by a such and such a date. And it varies from state to state. Some states are more aggressive than others. Pennsylvania, up till now, has not been too terribly aggressive in this area. And at a national level, you know, the current administration has really kind of shied away from this. But if we see a change in administration in November, the Biden camp is talking a lot more aggressively about trying to become a carbon net zero emissions and consumption economy, you know, in a pretty significantly aggressive time frame. So there is some pressure on a regulatory standpoint to become more efficient and more green.
Andy, just a follow-up to that, are you finding that some of these regulatory initiatives are becoming burdensome for businesses, or are they adapting quite naturally and letting market factors take take precedent over the additional costs that they have to implement?
Well, again, because it's not really being applied consistently, I guess some of the burden would be for some of our customers that have a presence in multiple states. You know, the burden becomes, you know, what am I expected to do in Maryland compared to Pennsylvania? You know, as I said before, Pennsylvania hasn't really become too restrictive yet. I know there's some movement afoot to try to become more aggressive in that area. So I would say at this point, the customers that I deal with in the Pennsylvania area really aren't seeing too much of a burden in this regard.
Thank you. And Vince, do you see that with the manufacturing? Are regulatory initiatives, are they impacting manufacturing? Is manufacturing trying to get ahead of it before the government imposes in order to make themselves competitive or stay competitive in their markets?
I haven't really seen a lot of regulations pushing manufacturers. However, I have seen manufacturers are trying to stay ahead of it from a simple standpoint, switching fork trucks from gas power to battery power, trying to get, again, reducing that footprint type of thing. I do have a lot of conversations around that and seeing if the capacity can work along those lines. So.
Good. And are they seeing a net neutral in costs, or again, is there a cost factor to making the switch that they ultimately absorb or pass on to consumers?
There is a cost to switching, but there is an ultimate gain in the long run. There is an upfront cost. Of course, switching from gas to battery power is a little bit more expensive. However, the gain is in the long run.
Okay, thank you. Adam, you probably see it a little differently. You probably see the end result as a branding and marketing firm. You probably see them taking those regulatory initiatives and finding ways to market their companies. Is that what you're seeing with your types of clients?
Absolutely. We are seeing a little bit of a push the other way. There's a phenomenon called greenwashing, which really became prevalent in the early 2010s, where folks and brands would market as being green, as being environmentally friendly, these very vague and often misleading ways. That led to a lot of cynicism among consumers and among businesses, where there's been a fair bit of pushback around not explicitly marketing oneself as environmentally friendly or safe or whatever it happens to be. That said, where we're seeing our clients have success is when they're truly living what they're doing, when it's an underpinning of the message, when it's something that's used for recruitment and employee happiness and one of the core values of the company.
You know, you make a great point there, Adam, that, you know, how does a consumer, or how does, in Vince's case, a manufacturer client of his who's selling a product to a retailer or perhaps to a distributor, how does the consumer know that the company is fulfilling its sustainability efforts or reducing its footprint? You talked about greenwashing through the early 2000s, 2010s. Do you see some change in the market that there's more certifications or verifications of the claims that companies are making?
In many cases, the consumer or the distributor simply can't know, right? There are times when brands will lie. I mean, we all heard about Volkswagen a few years ago where they had cheater devices. They could tell when the engine was on an emissions test, it would produce less emissions then, would go on the road, do something like 40x the limit. That led to a real degradation in trust. So things like third-party certifications, I would argue, have become marginally, or in some cases very less important than they used to be, because folks will look at them and say, I don't know that badge necessarily means anything. That said, a savvier consumer will know what to look for. In many cases, a savvier distributor will know what to look for in many cases, as opposed to some vague claim or something that's, frankly misleading.
Thank you. And Vince, just in keeping with my question to Adam, are programs such as Energy Star and some of the other benchmarking programs out there from government or pseudo-government agencies, are they helpful for manufacturers to use so that it gives them some credibility with their sustainability and lessening their impact?
For the manufacturers that are following along with the Energy Star regulation as an example, absolutely. There are consumers that are looking for that Energy Star rating. Doors, windows, things along those lines are an Energy Star type of appliance or device, and consumers are absolutely looking for that.
Andy, I would presume you at Constellation probably find the same. You really, I would imagine, promote the Energy Star and other programs, ISO, LEED, things of that nature to help companies verify their sustainability efforts.
Indeed. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we are promoting very heavily is a system of renewable energy certificates, or RECs, which was established nationwide by the electric industry so that a customer can purchase RECs, and it's a quick and easy way to show their support for their development of their sustainability efforts. So what they do when they purchase a REC is, they come to us and we will find them the ability basically to invest in energy or electricity that is generated by renewable sources. And we certify that for them so that they can show whoever needs to know that they are using renewable energy. It's certified and makes it easy for them.
And are all these programs that you're talking about, Andy, are these things that the small business community of the Chamber of Commerce membership can easily manage themselves, apply for, and utilize on things like their Facebook, their Instagram, their websites, and things of that nature for Atom at Altitude marketing to be able to market them in that manner?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I approach a chamber member, or if a chamber member approaches me and has an interest in, promoting how green they are, I will immediately point them in this direction to say, if you want to buy just your normal electricity, and not care about where it's generated, that's one thing. But if you want to be able to show your customers and show the world that you are, environmentally friendly, we can provide you with this program, and you do get certification to prove that, yes, you are buying solar power from, an array in Arizona, or you are buying wind power up in the hills of northern PA, and that is being, provided to you. It may not be, directly in the electrons that come to your door, but you are promoting it by buying into it.
Great. Adam, I see you shaking your head violently. You must agree. You want to take all of Andy's great ideas and start marketing them for chamber members, correct?
I'll give royalties on that, but okay. No, absolutely right, and that's part of that core value, and truly putting your money not where your mouth is necessarily, but putting your money where your heart is. If you take action and you do the right thing when it comes to climate, when it comes to energy efficiency, when it comes to everything that we're talking about today, the word will get out, and you don't run the risk of, again, coming across as someone who is simply sticking their flag in the ground and saying, we're energy efficient, we're climate conscious, whatever it happens to be, and having folks, get their hackles up and say, Volkswagen did the same thing.
Yes, they've rebounded very nicely from their falsifying of gas mileage. Vince, I would imagine a lot of your manufacturers, in terms of regulatory initiatives, are probably governed by a lot of international process certifications, such as ISO and things of that nature. Do you see that? Do you work with international companies that are governed by sometimes more restrictive, or in this case, what would be beneficial initiatives worldwide to reduce footprint?
I haven't, so I'm not really sure where to go with that particular question, but sure.
Is any of you familiar with that in terms of the application of more stringent standards internationally? No? Okay. I know ISO sets a little bit tougher standard for, as many countries said, much more restrictive sustainability and regulatory initiatives to lessen the impact for those that are sending product nationwide or internationally. Moving on to our next question, and I think we've tackled a lot of this one. Are more consumers requesting vendors become more sensitive to the environment and climate change issues? If so, can each of you maybe cite an example of where you've had a client or a particular business that's really done a 180 in terms of their impact to the environment? I'll start that with Vince, if you could kick us off with that question.
Sure. Absolutely. And I believe Adam hit the nail on the head. The first thing is the culture at the company has to change. And they really have to understand that it's not an easy change. It's going to take some time to make it happen. But we are dealing with a few chemical manufacturers that are trying to reduce how much of that chemical they use by capturing it, recycling it within their own facility to not end up sending it back out or polluting something along the way. So they're truly, their mindset of how they operate has changed. And they're looking to recapture a lot of that processed chemical, we'll call it, so that they can filter it and reuse it again. It has a whole lot of benefits, but the main one is for the environment, to reduce that footprint that they're putting out. There's cost savings associated with it too. The amount of raw chemical they have to buy gets reduced along the way. So, but it is, the process has to start with the mindset change of the company.
And Vince, in that example, does it also create some trickle-down benefits where that waste product doesn't make it out into the disposal stream?
Absolutely, absolutely. It has just a trickle-down cascading effect everywhere along the way, whether it's a on-premise septic system or a municipal waste system. When you're not putting that stuff back out, then there's so many other processes along the way. The testing, the monitoring, all of that stuff starts to get reduced. Cost savings along the way. And then the treatment plant doesn't have to deal with it either anymore.
And how do you find taking that process and equating it to, again, some of the chamber small business? A large percentage of the chamber's membership is small business.
Mm-hmm.
Can the small business owners take and utilize that same process of elimination of certain hazardous materials within their firms quite easily and replace them? Are replacement products readily available for most of the dangerous and hazardous materials in the workplace?
Some of them. I'm not going to say most of them, because without knowing what everybody's chemicals are, but yeah, there are quite a few replacement for chemicals. Some of them are a little bit more expensive, so there is a compromise there, and there's a benefit cost comparison you have to make to figure it out. But absolutely, small business, big business can all benefit from this. And a lot of it is not massive technology. Sometimes it's just a matter of understanding what you're doing to find a better way to recycle and reuse that product.
Okay, thank you. Adam, what are you seeing? Are you seeing that more demand from consumers that are dictating to your clients that they be more conscious of their impacts to the earth?
Absolutely, and one group I don't want to overlook here is employees, right? And the impact this can have on recruiting. I was actually talking with a partner of ours today out in Denver, a tech company. They just gave up the lease on their building. It was running up and they decided to go full remote. And I said, well, why, right? There's a lot of benefits there. The employees like it, but part of what the employees like, and this tends to be a millennial and Gen Z type of workforce, is they said, look, the amount of pollution we're not spewing into the air to commute to do the exact same job is huge. We see the same thing in our business. We're very much a tech company here. So our recruiting pool is very similar, and it's probably the most environmentally conscious and climate conscious group of folks on the planet, the type of folks that we recruit. So we've taken strides at Altitude to make even small changes, right? Using less Keurig and more larger style coffee machines is one, just promoting recycling, promoting multiple use plastics as opposed to single use plastics. And that's key for us. It's part of who we are as a company, but it also makes it a lot easier to differentiate ourselves and show to the type of talent that we have here in the Valley that we are the employer that they want to come work for.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And I imagine the recent challenges of COVID-19 have made employers even more cognizant of their work environments and the surroundings for their employees and staff. Andy, what are you seeing? Are you seeing consumers really, pushing more for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to lessen their impact? If so, how's it played out for Constellation?
Yes, we have. I want to point out one sector that is really taking a leadership role in this area, and that would be the universities and colleges, across the country. We have, our headquarters is in Baltimore, and we recently did a huge project with Johns Hopkins University where they purchased a huge array. We call it CORE. It's our Constellation Offsite Renewable Energy, where they took a large position in a solar array that was going to bring all of that campus's power from a renewable source. You know, closer to home, I attended the LVAIC, the Lehigh Valley Association of Independent Colleges Sustainability Summit, back in the late winter. And I, sat in on some presentations, and one that particularly caught my attention was Lafayette College, who, they have a plan to become completely carbon zero, I believe, by 2035. And they laid out all the steps and all the projects, some of which I'm hopeful we'll be participating in, to really reduce their carbon footprint. And the reason for that is they want to, set a great example for, a lot of energy consuming entities across the country and the world. And B, they want to give their students, some teaching opportunities and get them involved so that they can show them, firsthand and directly what it is they can do to help save the planet, if you will. I mean, universities are always going to be a pretty idealistic setting, but they are really putting their money where their mouth is as far as their desire to reduce their carbon footprint, to become more energy efficient, to become greener. And that obviously is something that we love to help them with.
Great. Andy, I would imagine, and probably Vince, you too, you're probably seeing more and more businesses, as you mentioned, Andy, with universities, more having sustainability directors or sustainability managers to help to drive some of the initiatives and outcomes from these businesses. Does that, both you gentlemen see that in your work?
I do, more so with some of the larger companies. I mean, obviously, when we're talking about smaller companies or like companies that are part of the chamber, where they may not be able to afford to do something like that, they can obviously hook up with Constellation or with Altitude to help them hone their message and get across what it is they want to do, and then we can help them do it. The larger companies, the universities, the manufacturers, they're going to be the ones, I think, who really are going to have internal people dedicated to sustainability, and they do.
Okay, thank you. Vince, you see the same? You see sustainability directors, managers within the companies you work with?
I do. You do see them in the bigger companies, and then the smaller companies are looking for additional resources outside.
So that's a good point both of you made there. I'm sorry, thank you, Vince. So you talked about smaller businesses looking for resources. What are some of the resources that you can recommend? Adam, I'll start with you because you've had experience with companies across the nation from the marketing perspective. What tools or what resources would you recommend for the small business community as they're mostly challenged with the resource availability?
So I'll start on the tech side. I will say that automation and other tools are more available than they've ever been. The flip way of saying it is that there's really no reason to ever copy and paste anymore. If you have a repetitive task or something that is sucking the time away from either a core competency or an initiative like sustainability, you can probably automate it. You can probably automate it for free or very, very low dollars. You can probably do it yourself. So that's the one gift that can be given right now is the time to think about these things and the time to focus on these things. The other piece is, I mentioned a partner of ours earlier on today, increasingly in the tech world and in every world, partner ops, just like sales ops. It came up maybe 20 years ago. Partner ops has very much become a thing. So companies and individuals are focusing much more than ever on building networks, on building communities within their own ecosystems and with other companies to provide support, to provide advice, to provide help. I think we've realized now that as a national community, as a global community, all we really have is each other at the moment because we have some challenges here in 2020, at least in the last 6 months. So we've really seen folks look to build communities, be it on forums, be it on Slack channels, be it on Discord, whatever it happens to be. But there are resources out there on the human side as well to help you, to support you, and to provide just an ear or a bit of advice.
Thank you. Vince, what do you see for the manufacturing and your clients? What resources do they have at their disposal to to find tools and available resources for lessening their footprint?
I absolutely agree with the technology side. As you can see, I'm now sitting in the dark because my office is on a light sensor that I can't get to while I'm sitting here. So I had to turn the light on my desk. But I absolutely agree with technology, and especially a lot of the older manufacturing facilities. The new manufacturing facilities, a lot of this technology is built in. The simple light switch that has the automatic sensor built into it. That's part of new technology. But the older facilities that are out there, the small, simple, little devices can actually make a huge savings in reducing their footprint. Lights that go off by themselves at the end of the day, people forget to turn them off when they go home. But that kind of technology, local electricians, those kinds of local contractors too, can actually help put these smaller devices in to help the companies reduce that footprint.
And Vince, at ESPI, you, I think, you can assist businesses with looking at becoming more efficient. Is that correct?
That is correct. Absolutely. We can come in, take a look at your facility, and help you put together a plan for whether it's short-term, long-term, to convert your facility and become as efficient as possible. Absolutely, we can help with that.
All right, great, thank you. Andy, you imagine at Constellation, you have a plethora of resources for the chamber members, isn't that right?
Oh, absolutely. I would say if you want to do something, pick up the phone and call me, because we at Constellation have made an investment in a couple of companies that use artificial intelligence to look at energy in a different way. The one is a company called Pair AI, who we actually brought on board, and they are what they call themselves an energy intelligence company. They will take a look at a customer's bills, and they will monitor them and audit them. And using AI, they will figure out if they're like overpaying on a sewer bill, on a power bill, on a gas bill, and report that out. And we are offering that to our customers, as part of our pricing package now, so that they can, that's, a first step is make sure you're not being billed incorrectly, because, I don't think you would be amazed at how often customers are overpaying for what they use. And there's another company we bought called Logical Buildings. That's a smart building AI platform that I think does a little bit about what Vince was talking about too. It monitors your building's energy usage, sustainability targets, and health based on sensors and smart meters to pick up real-time data, and can report back on that and make recommendations, and actually in some instances like control what your building is doing to make you more energy efficient. Beyond that, Constellation is big into electrical vehicles, trying to electrify people's fleets. So we partnered with ChargePoint, which is one of the leading providers of electric refueling infrastructure. And we actually offer customers rebates if they want to go with an electric vehicle and a charging station. We do any number of projects under our Efficiency Made Easy platform, which is basically taking a look at efficiency opportunities within a customer's facility, and offering to finance the cost of energy efficiency improvements, whether it be something as simple as lighting retrofits or even like a chiller replacement, where basically the cost savings is used to finance the cost of the project over a given period of time. So let's say they have to amortize the cost of a chiller replacement over 5 years, and the goal being that we can be cost neutral while those 5 years are being paid off. And then after that, the long-term view is the customer gets to reap the benefit of those savings and has a new system in place. So there are many, many things that Constellation can do to help chamber members and customers to reduce their energy costs and become more sustainable.
And just a reminder to our audience that all of their bios, so that you can call Andy as he instructed, are in the virtual program. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to move on to some of the Q&A questions that have come up here during this presentation. The first, which is really great, a question from one of our attendees. And I'm going to pose this first to Adam as, working with Altitude Marketing. The question is, and you started off with the skepticism, from the last greenwashing. So this is a good question as it related to that comment. How can small businesses promote themselves as earth-friendly businesses and still be competitive?
Absolutely. So in terms of promotion, I think the most important thing is specificity. Vagueness will get you in trouble. Simply putting out there that this product or this business is eco-friendly, earth-friendly, organic, without a certification, that will raise skepticism. That doesn't mean anything. The best case scenario is it is a net neutral. The worst case scenario is somebody picks up on it and says, "No, you're just saying that." All of a sudden, you've raised apples, and there's an issue there. In terms of being competitive, there's been a lot of talk today, and rightfully so, that this can be either cost savings or worst case scenario cost neutral to embark on some of these efforts. There might be an upfront investment. I go back to our small example of coffee. There was certainly an upfront investment there, but I'll tell you that we have saved money because they are cheaper than Keurig cups, right? So I think that from a spend perspective, you can certainly get there. In terms of networks for promotion, technology has democratized so much of what we do. Getting the word out used to require, multi-thousand-dollar press releases that would go out via distribution services. You can certainly still do that now. You have lower cost and even free options with things like social media and other tools. So it can certainly be done cost effectively, both on the transformation side and on the promotion side. And like I said, the most important thing, be specific about what you're doing. Don't let someone get the impression that you're just saying it. Put your money where your heart is.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, is to be very specific. You don't get yourself in trouble and wind up losing customers and demographic over a broad statement. Vince, I imagine you're at ESPI, you probably deal with mid-sized to larger sized companies. What do you recommend in terms of how they can promote themselves as earth-friendly and still be competitive?
A lot of our clients are just specifically dealing with the recycle side and the reuse. Again, I go back to the simple things, incoming packaging, outgoing packaging, those types of projects can really have a benefit to the cost. And then it really does help when you start to look at what you're actually doing, and you can recycle and separate and reuse a lot of the product that's in your existing facility. It absolutely has a definite benefit to the bottom line.
Vince, do you see a lot of companies using that as a promotion to distinguish themselves from other competitors, or is it just something they're really doing just out of the right thing to do for the environment and the earth?
For what I'm seeing, it's a lot of things. It's the right thing to do. That's what I'm dealing with my clients, is they believe that it's the right thing to do. I happen to agree with it too.
Okay. Adam, I'm going to kick it back to you. Or do you see companies utilizing the goodness of their heart, or the proper ethical, moral future of our children thing to do? Are they promoting themselves, or is this just something that they're doing and not utilizing it as a competitive advantage?
When they are using it as a competitive advantage, it's part of the ethos of the company. Again, going back to the tech industry, that's a certain demographic, that's a certain group of people, and that's absolutely something that they look for in an employer, in a partner, in a vendor, right? So when it's baked in and done well, it translates into things that aren't necessarily just about the environment, not just about the climate. It's the way they do business, it's the way they treat their employees, it's the way that they treat their partners and their buyers.
So what I'm hearing is it's really got to be a culture. It's just to be a top-down, from ownership right down through the employees, that then feeds out to the consumers of those products and services. Andy, is that what you're seeing within Constellation as well?
Yeah, it is. And we had talked earlier about, the message coming down from on high, from the boards, from the, stakeholders, from the upper management. It really does have to be a culture thing. But another good point to make is that, sustainability doesn't have to cost money. Sustainability really can and should be, and often is, a good business decision. We're talking about, becoming more energy efficient. We're talking about lowering your costs. Back 10, 15 years ago, if somebody said they wanted to buy green power, there was a cost associated with that. that's been changing because, the availability of, more wind, more solar, more hydro has really driven those prices down to the point where, they're almost on an equal footing with, the traditional coal, gas-fired, or nuclear power. Well, nuclear is still the cheapest, but and Constellation has a lot of that too, but that's another story. But yeah, the point we're trying to make is sustainability is good business, and it has to do with being baked into the culture. It has to do with everybody from on high down to the frontline workers getting it, that this is something that they're doing that they can feel good about. They can feel good about giving their children a better planet than what they have now. But at the end of the day, it also hits the bottom line because it's going to save you money in the long run. So, besides just the goodwill that there is obviously a value to, there also should and can be cost savings associated with becoming more sustainable.
Great. Well, thank you, Andy. Just a question before we close out this session. I'll start with Adam. What advice would you give to the Chamber of Commerce small businesses who really are thinking they need to change their sustainability efforts and move forward with a more environmentally friendly or lessen their impact? A minute each. I'm going to start with Adam, and then we'll go around. Adam?
With the timer on, the biggest advice is look, start small, right? It feels like a lot, right? You look at California right now. California is on fire. It feels like there's nothing that I can do personally that I can do as a business owner here, even that my entire industry can do. It just feels so big, but even small changes can go a long way. The corollary to that is, again, we've talked a lot about cultural shifts today. If it becomes part of, again, the ethos of your company, who you are as individuals and as a firm, that's fantastic. That will bubble up. If you're only trying to do something for the purposes of promotion, you're doing it wrong, and it's probably not going to be very effective either from a promotional side or from a climate side.
Great. Andy, I'll take that same question and direct it to you for a minute. There you go. Call them. It's in the virtual program.
I would love to send anybody in the chamber who's interested in getting started some more information. Constellation, as we've talked about, has an awful lot of resources we can bring to bear. Beyond that, as far as publicizing this, we have blogs, we have podcasts, we have case studies. I would love to be able to bring a chamber member on board, do something, as Adam said, even starting small, but show everybody, not just in the chamber, but in the state, in the nation, in the world, what it is you've done and how it's, giving us a better planet as a result. And, oh, by the way, also saving you some money. So yeah, love to talk to everybody about that.
Great advice. Thanks, Andy. And Vince, how about you? What advice would you give to those business?
I absolutely agree with Adam and Andy. Start small, take small pieces, but stay with it. And as Adam had said, if you're in it for a quick public term, if you want to call it that, you're in it for the wrong reason. You got to start small and you got to stay with it.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being part of session number 2 here and on this panel. I want to thank all of you, Andy with Constellation Energy, Vince with ESPI, and Adam with Altitude Marketing. It's been a pleasure. We thank you for all of your valuable information, and hopefully our chamber membership will benefit from the advice you gave today. And if you've learned nothing else, what do we do, Andy? There you go. Call one of these gentlemen. Thank you all.
Hello, I'm Phil Donatelli. I am the Regional Sales Manager for RCN Business here in the Lehigh Valley. And now it is time to introduce the final 2 Lehigh Valley Environmental Innovation Awards of 2020. The Small Business Award is presented to a company that submitted a unique plan to repurpose an original structure while maintaining the primary facades. It was the first of its kind federal opportunity zone investment project in Pennsylvania. This historic redevelopment project represents the best practices of preservation and creativity to retain a significant historic resource within our community for over 125 years now. It is my pleasure to present the 2020 Lehigh Valley Environmental Innovations Award for a Small Business Award to Jefferson Werner LLC. This award is for their reuse of the original Lehigh Valley cold storage building into the new Brinker Lofts residential building. Congratulations and fantastic work.
Originally, the Lehigh Valley Cold Storage Company, founded in 1893 by Adam Brinker, was a windowless building constructed in a Romanesque revival style and is used to store cases of eggs and produce 40 tons of ice per day. Flash forward 70-some years, in this great vision, and Brinker Loft stands Lehigh Valley's latest rehab success story. Located in the south side of Bethlehem, just minutes from Lehigh University, Brinker Lofts is the first Opportunity Zone project in Pennsylvania and amongst the first in the country. Developer Charlie Jefferson's vision included modern residential living, but was committed to preserve the historic architecture and original windowless facade. Utilizing federal and state historic tax credits, Jefferson Werner capitalized on the unique design of the building. Keeping the 3-story appearance but creating a 5-story livable space proved challenging, but accentuates the character that gives Brinker its appeal. It was important to Jefferson to create a living space where residents were just as happy spending time inside their apartments as well as out. Brinker's deconstructed courtyard came to life when Jefferson saw an opportunity to repurpose the structure that was added much later than the original construction. Keeping true to the windowless design, a single loaded corridor remains, framing the beautiful green space for residents to enjoy. When you're in the neighborhood, you'll find great food, shopping, and nightlife just minutes outside your door. So whether you're enrolling next semester or enjoying all Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley have to offer, Brinker Lofts always has their door and windows open.
Good morning. I'm Paul Anthony, Business Manager for the IBEW Local Union 375, representing the organized electrical workers throughout the Lehigh Valley. This year's 2020 Lehigh Valley Environmental Innovations Award for a large business is presented to a corporation that is committed to minimizing their impact on the environment with a long-term sustainable approach that benefits customers, employees, shareholders, and society as a whole. This corporation has supported its mission of progressing towards a cleaner energy future by setting a corporate goal to reduce their levels of carbon dioxide emissions 70% by 2040 and 80% by 2050, reducing their carbon footprint by more than 6,000 metric tons by 2025 through electrification of their fleet vehicles, creating a community roots program that has distributed more than 80,000 trees, and also recycling wood utility poles, scrap metal, and unneeded soils, investing in a renewable energy infrastructure by developing an industry-leading smart grid. Even with all of these impressive commitments, this corporation is able to create extraordinary value and save customers hundreds of millions of dollars through energy efficiency programs and education. On behalf of the Chamber and the Energy and Environment Committee, I am honored to present the Lehigh Valley Environmental Innovations Award for a large business to PP&L Electric Utilities. Accepting the award today is Greg Duncan, President of PP&L Electric Utilities.
At PPL, caring about the environment is a mindset, a commitment. Here in central and eastern Pennsylvania, PPL Electric Utilities is leading by example as a business and for those it serves. We've installed a distributed energy resource management system to enable more solar and wind resources to connect to our system and maintain high reliability. This helps us ensure the grid operates smoothly and prepares us to meet the needs of the future. Our Keystone Solar Future project is gathering valuable real-world experience managing a growing number of solar installations. The online connection portal for renewable energy projects allows most customers to receive approval within 24 hours. And as we retire our bucket trucks, we're replacing them with trucks with battery electric lifts. We've embarked on a program to substantially reduce the release of SF6, a potent greenhouse gas used as an insulator in substation circuit breakers. We recycle a lot, including things like old wood utility poles, scrap metal, and even unneeded soil. We're also investigating how we can best help pollinators, ospreys, and peregrines to flourish in our area. Our Community Roots program has distributed approximately 80,000 trees since it launched just a few years ago. Energy efficiency programs have saved customers hundreds of millions of dollars. Customers have recycled more than 134,000 appliances and purchased over 24 million energy-efficient light bulbs. It's a well-rounded effort. At PPL, delivering for our customers is about more than safe, reliable electric service. It's also about a cleaner, greener world.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to join all of you today to recognize the achievements of the environmental community in the Lehigh Valley. Congratulations to all the winners, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event and recognizing organizations which exemplify best green practices. As you just saw, PPL Electric Utilities takes its environmental commitments and responsibilities seriously. We're reducing our carbon footprint and preparing for a sustainable energy future. As the energy landscape evolves, we believe it's our responsibility to serve all our customers with a power grid capable of helping them reach their own sustainability goals. Over the past century, we've helped power the growth of industry and communities in central and eastern Pennsylvania, and that commitment continues as we advance to a cleaner and more diverse energy future. On behalf of PPL Electric Utilities, our dedicated staff, and our 1.4 million customers, it is an honor to accept the 2020 Lehigh Valley Environmental Innovations Large Business Award. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on our 2020 Lehigh Valley Sustainability Summit. A huge thank you to every attendee, sponsor, and our incredible panels for making this event possible and a success. Congratulations once again to Sustainable Energy Fund, PPL, and Jefferson Werner LLC. We look forward to seeing everyone in person next year.